off a daily fantasy. His number too high, then I'm probably fading him. He been on the road, he gon' eat up my salary. I hit a buy, he gon' lie before lock. Play back to back, then I probably won't pick on the DFS bachelor, good as it gets. Bit a few liners and hit me a leg. He had a good game, but it might be a trick. Log in the Slack so I know who to pick. Sharing our liners, we all gon' get rich. New to this game, you should come to the pad. You might want some cash and get a good laugh. DFS Sports, we gon' run up a bag. He heard every game and it's making me mad. You buying your lineups, I think you a cheater. DFS bachelor, he the new leader. Yeah.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Bachelor Pad. I, of course, am your host, the DFS Bachelor, and we're going to go over our Fanduel and Draftkings XFL Week 1 picks. Pretty excited for the XFL. The game's going to be a lot of fun. The rules are different, shorter play clocks. Should be pretty exciting. I'm really looking forward to it, and there's just a lot of unknowns going into Week 1. So what we're going to do is just kind of do our best going game by game, team by team, talking about their coaches, their schemes, their players. You can see up on the screen, I have a little bit different format for XFL. I just have it all here on an Excel file. Here you can read the notes for the players, the prices, etc. Before we get into all that, thank you for all your support. Seriously, I do appreciate you all so much. Thank you for making me a part of your day and everything else. If you're new to the channel, welcome to the team. Be sure to hit that subscribe button down below. We will be covering everything for XFL throughout the XFL season, the playoffs, so it should be a lot of fun. Gone through and did as much research as possible going into a wildly unknown Week 1. I mean, none of these players, teams, coaches have been a team before. It's the very first game for all these franchises, so there's just a lot of unknowns. So hopefully this helps us get a bit of an edge. Fanduel finally, just within the last hour or so, added Sunday XFL as well, so we can get prices and everything for both sites for all the players, which is nice. So there's that. Also, you can get access to our NBA content that we do throughout the week as well. So hit subscribe if you're so inclined to do that. So let's just jump right into it. Our first game is Seattle at DC. So we have the Seattle Dragons at the DC Defenders. Seattle is coached by Jim Zorn. Their offensive coordinator is Mike Riley. They're going to run a West Coast offense. They have the cheapest quarterback on Fanduel and the second cheapest quarterback on Draftkings, and Brandon Silvers, who beat out BJ Daniels for the starting job. It's going to be a West Coast style type of offense. I think you read reports from camp. The DC defense, their secondary, was very good against Seattle in their scrimmage that they played before this Week 1 game. So I do like seeing that. I don't have a ton of exposure to a ton of Seattle players. Maybe their running back, Kenneth Farrow. He's 7'2" on Draftkings. I have some consideration for him there. Did I include him on this list? I don't even think I did. But that's probably where I'm at with him. Some, in West Coast style offenses, which Mike Riley and Jim Zorn both are going to want to run. So it makes a lot of sense. Now, again, we don't know for sure. This is our first time together, but we can only go off of the history of these coordinators. We know the long history of Riley and Zorn. So Farrow's probably my favorite play there. I don't have a ton of interest in their receivers in their passing game yet. I guess Reynolds or Williams, if you want to go there. Dontez Bird could be some value, I suppose. But for the DC side, number one, I like their defense. Now, there's no defenses on FanDuel, only on DraftKings. They're $4,200, the second most expensive. I'm not sure how much defense is going to matter. Quite frankly, we'll just have to see. But from the reports I read, that secondary in DC is really good. DC, their head coach, Pep Hamilton, their offensive coordinator, Tanner Engstrand, they're going to be probably a run-heavy offense. Now, Pep Hamilton, you might remember from his time as offensive coordinator for the Colts, coaching Andrew Luck. And during those seasons, they were certainly pass-heavy, but only when they had Andrew Luck. His other stints as a coordinator, his teams ran the ball more than they threw the ball. Tanner Engstrand was an head coach at SDU, offensive coordinator, at San Diego University. Always a run-heavy offense there, so they're going to try to run the football. Their quarterback is Cardale Jones. I do have interest in Cardale Jones. He's 10-2 on DraftKings. There's no quarterback controversy there in DC. There are a couple teams where the quarterback situation's a little fluid. We know who all the starters are, but there could be some short leashes there. Cardale Jones, the big play upside. I do like Cardale Jones, but based on that offense for DC, I also like Jarrell Presley, their running back. He led the AAF last year. If you remember that other pro league that tried to start up and they went defunct kind of in the middle of the year. He was leading them in rushing yards per game average. He's going to have another guy with Donnell Pumphrey in the backfield, some NFL experience there. Young guy, really good college career for Donnell Pumphrey. $5,100 on DK, $16 on Fanduel. You're getting Presley for $7.9 on DraftKings, $18 on Fanduel. I like him there as well. And if you're going for, a DC receiver, if you're, desperate to do that, Rashard Ross was one of the highest picks in the draft. He's the most expensive wide receiver on DraftKings at 10-4. Middle of the pack on Fanduel at 1,500. He was traded early in camp, traded to DC after being drafted early. He's got big play upside. It's a run-heavy coach. I think if you're going to go a receiver there, the receiver they've been talking about saying he made big play after big play in camp was DeAndre Tompkins. He's at $4,600 on DraftKings and $14 on FanDuel. The reports that you can read from the team is that he had a good camp. Big play after big play. That's that game right there. Let's go to the next game on Saturday. The LA Wildcats at the Houston Roughnecks. So you have the LA Wildcats coached by Winston Moss. Of all the 8 teams in the league who's their head coach, they're the only one that went with a head coach with a defensive history as a coach. So he was more on the defensive side of the ball. Remember, linebacker in the NFL, Raiders, a little bit of time, I believe, with the 49ers, has been a defensive coach. He's the only defensive-minded coach. Now, Bob Stoops, of course, can coach some defense, but he's also known for his, wide open offenses with, Landry Jones, who is going to be his quarterback at some point this year, Sam Bradford, etc. So Winston Moss went out and hired Norm Chow. Norm Chow was the offensive coordinator at USC with the Titans, etc. He's a balanced guy. Even with those USC teams with Carson Palmer, Reggie Bush, etc., his teams were 50-50 run and pass. I believe that Carson Palmer team, they only averaged like a little less than one pass attempt more per game or a little over one pass attempt more per game than they ran the ball. So it's going to be a pretty balanced offense. I do have interest in Josh Johnson. Obviously, he's supposed to be the face of the league. He's the most expensive quarterback on both sides. Oh, wait, he just got a questionable tag. Missed practice due to a thigh injury. Now he's considered a game time decision. So we'll have to keep an eye on Josh Johnson. That just came out today. Considered a game time decision. If he doesn't play, then Chad Canoff is there, and that makes me like the running game even more with Elijah Hood. He's 7.5 on DraftKings, 20 on FanDuel. He's the clear number one back. Norm Chow offense, like we said, they're going to like to run the ball. They throw the ball to the running backs. I like that play across the board. I do have the LA receiving situation down here. Nelson Spruce is $8,500 on DraftKings, $14 on FanDuel. It's a pretty good value on FanDuel. In the AAF last year, put up big numbers. I think he was third in targets, second in yards. Obviously, a much better play on FanDuel. He's 8.5 on DraftKings. The other two starters for LA, the listed starters already for LA at wide receiver, they're starting 3 wide receivers. Smallwood is $3K. He's $19 on FanDuel, so he's one of the more expensive wide receivers on FanDuel, and he's a minimum salary on DraftKings. So one of the sites screwed up. So just have exposure to him on DraftKings and hope that FanDuel's got it right. Adonis Jennings is $3,300 on DraftKings, $16 on FanDuel. So you can see the most expensive receiver by a mile, by over $5,000 on DraftKings, is the cheaper wide receiver on FanDuel. There you go. It's week 1. There's a lot of unknowns, but I do think it's interesting to note. Nelson Spruce was, again, big numbers, big targets. He's not as fast as Smallwood or Jennings, but I do like Spruce. And again, we'll have to keep an eye on Josh Johnson. He has a huge high rushing upside. Most experience in the NFL and the league, but now coming up questionable today. Let's keep an eye, watch out for Chad Canoff, who could be way down in salary. Chad Canoff would be $6K, would be the cheapest starting quarterback. Their opponent, Houston, right now has the cheapest starting quarterback on DraftKings, third cheapest on FanDuel. That is Philip Walker. He's $7,800 on DraftKings, $18 on FanDuel. Remember, FanDuel is kind of doing this Yahoo pricing for XFL. It's very strange, but that's what they're doing. The reason Philip Walker's in play, first of all, he's just announced a starter today over Connor Cook, whom DraftKings had priced at $9,400. Incidentally enough, FanDuel had Connor Cook cheaper than Philip Walker, so they kind of had the inside scoop, it looks like, a little bit there. But Houston is coached by June Jones. His offensive coordinator is his quarterback from Atlanta in those Atlanta Falcons days, Chris Miller. He spent some time as a Cardinals offensive coordinator from 09 to 11. You're going to expect a ton of passing. June Jones' offense consistently year in and year out have multiple receivers with 100-plus targets. His last 4 years in Atlanta, I think he hit 3 or all 4 years. All of his receivers had 95 or 100-plus targets. 3 receivers. He was the only team in the league to have 3 receivers with 100-plus catches 4 straight years, or 3 or 4, something like that. You're going to see a ton of passing. So Phillip Walker has big upside just because of the pass volume. There's also some risk because Connor Cook, of course, is the more polished NFL guy with the bigger name. If Phillip Walker were to struggle, then you would expect they would turn to Connor Cook. So that is a situation to keep an eye on. But you got to love June Jones quarterbacks, and a June Jones offense, I think, just spells fantasy gold. So, of course, I'm going to have exposure to Phillip Walker. This week, the running back situation in Houston. Andre Williams, another one of these guys who are priced drastically different. What I found interesting about Andre Williams, some of you Giants fans might remember Andre Williams, big giant power back, played for the Giants. What was interesting about him, as big and powerful as he is, he was had the third best speed rating among running backs in the preseason workout before they did all the draft and everything. So Andre Williams, big time speed, could control the running back situation there. He's 3,800 on Draftkings, 19 on Fanduel. There's a screw up there. I'm going to have plenty of exposure to him on Draftkings and take a chance. Now, Draftkings, you could justify that low price by saying, well, it's a June Jones offense and they're going to throw the ball a ton. That is true, and Andre Williams never had more than 10 catches in any stint of anywhere in his career in terms of college, pros, etc. But if you look closely at some of those June Jones teams, when you look at the season stats, one guy that stood out to me a couple of those years, 2 straight years, Craig Ironhead Hayward. For those of you who remember him, but Ironhead, the commercials and whatnot. He was a giant 270-pound fullback bruising back who had consecutive years of over 30 catches. I thought that's very interesting. I think that bodes well for Andre Williams. I like Andre Williams in that game. When you look at the Houston receivers, Sammy Coates headlines the group. He's 9,300 on DraftKings. He's $20 on FanDuel. Of course, you remember him. Speed guy with Pittsburgh. Had some huge plays, just couldn't stay in the league. Had some off-the-field troubles and drops. Drops were a problem for Sammy Coates. But big-time upside, big-time speed. You do worry about the quarterback situation. You just hope one of them can play well. If you're going to pivot to someone in that Houston passing game, like we talked about, it's not going to surprise me to see 3 or 4 receivers have 80, 90, 100 targets in this offense. Khalil Lewis is 4,100 on DraftKings, 16 on FanDuel. Lots of speed there. A young guy whom they actually drafted pretty high. I think they might have drafted him above Sammy Coates, if I remember correctly. So I do like him as well. All right, let's go to the Sunday games. The early game on Sunday, Tampa Bay at New York. The Tampa Bay Vipers are coached by Mark Trestman. Their offensive coordinator is Jamie Elizondo. Jamie Elizondo and Trestman both have ties in the CFL. Elizondo's teams the last 3 seasons with Ottawa of the CFL. Big-time, heavy passing attack, throwing the ball considerably more than he ran the football. So you can expect Tampa Bay to throw the ball. Mark Trestman, of course, you remember in the early to mid-90s. He was a coordinator with the 49ers. He was a quarterbacks coach for Favre, Steve Young, Jeff Garcia. Later on with Baltimore, etc. So Mark Trestman has some experience in the league, and it's with quarterbacks. It's on the offensive side of the ball. So you expect him to throw a lot. Their quarterback is Aaron Murray, the kid out of Georgia. High pedigree. I think there's high expectations there. A lot of players on this team from Florida. I think 23 players on the Tampa Bay team are from Florida, which I think is interesting. So the quarterback, Aaron Murray, I absolutely like him. He's $9K on DraftKings, $18 on FanDuel. He has one of the fastest wide receiving cores in the league just from the speed ratings. Heavy pass potential. I do like Aaron Murray quite a bit. The running back situation for Tampa Bay is a little murky. Smith and Patrick, the top running back on the depth chart is De'Veon Smith. He could see some passes out of the backfield. He's 6,300 on DraftKings. Let me see what he is on FanDuel. Real quick, we'll do a quick check here. He's $16 on FanDuel. Really what you're looking at in this game is the wide receivers for Tampa Bay. Now, they have very cheap starting wide receivers. They also have some injuries in the wide receiving core. They were supposed to have Antonio Callaway from Cleveland. He's on the IR. So their 3 starting receivers are Reese Horn, Tolliver, and Dan Williams are $3,400, $3,200, and minimum salary on DraftKings. When you look at their prices on FanDuel, you've got Dan Williams is $16, Tolliver is $18, and Reese Horn is $13. So you're getting these Tolliver and Williams at minimum salary, and they're priced way up at $18 and $16 on FanDuel. So there's another huge pricing discrepancy. Reese Horn at $3,400. One guy to watch for in their passing game is their tight end. Now they're going to be all listed as a wide receiver. You get wide receiver / tight end on FanDuel. They're just listed as wide receivers on DraftKings, and that's Nick Truesdell. He's $6,900 on DraftKings, only $14 on FanDuel. Athletic, big. They really liked him in camp. Their very first pick was Nick Truesdell, so I do think he could have a nice game week 1 as well. Their opponent, New York. New York is coached, the New York Guardians is coached and coordinated by Kevin Gilbride. Of course, you Giants fans will remember Kevin Gilbride, offensive coordinator, head coach. All of his teams, as a head coach or coordinator for the Giants, threw the football more than they ran it, except for Eli Manning's rookie year. Now, the problem with New York, a lot of injuries at wide receiver. 3 of their top 4 drafted wide receivers are injured or not on the roster for week 1. Their only wide receiver who's there is very high priced. Mekeel McKay is $9,900 on DraftKings, making him the second highest priced wide receiver. $17 on FanDuel. If you're looking for a pivot off of Mekeel McKay, you could go down to EJ Bibbs, who they really like. They said he had a great camp. They said he was athletic. He's $3,600 on DraftKings. When we come over here to FanDuel, EJ Bibbs is down at $9. Could be an interesting play. EJ Bibbs is going to be the starting tight end. And with all the injuries in the passing game for New York, could be an interesting play. So McKay, EJ Bibbs, the pivot. The other receivers for New York, if you are interested, Pearson at $5,300, maybe Joe Horn Jr. at $3,300. We'll have to see how involved they really get. They also have Gentry and Harris on the IR. Those are the other 2 receivers. Mekeel McKay, like I said, is the lone man standing there. Could be a nice value on FanDuel at $17. Final game. St. Louis, the St. Louis Battlehawks at the Dallas Renegades. Right? Did I get that right? Yeah, the Dallas Renegades. So St. Louis is coached by Jonathan Hayes, tight ends coach, etc. A tight end in the NFL, if you all remember Jonathan Hayes with the Chiefs, etc. His offensive coordinator is Chuck Long, former San Diego State head coach. Spent some time as offensive coordinator in some other college jobs, etc. If you look at Chuck Long's offenses when he's the head coach at San Diego State or offensive coordinator in that 9 years there, his team averaged just over 29 passes a game and over 39 rushes a game. They're going to run the ball a lot more than they throw it. 29 passes to 39 runs. Their quarterback, Jordan Ta'amu. Jordan Ta'amu, $8,700 on DraftKings, $17 on FanDuel. Could be a nice fast-paced type rushing offense that they run. I do like Jordan Ta'amu a lot. I think he's got some fantasy upside with all the rushing upside. I don't love a ton of their wide receivers. Just doesn't make a lot of sense because you expect this team to run the ball more than most teams in the league. But if there is one value that I do like from St. Louis, and it's the tight end. He's super cheap. Yeah, wasn't he down here at... Am I looking at the right man? Yeah. Oh, sorry, I was at the wrong position. Let me get to him. I apologize for the delay here. I had it all set up. I'm still learning all of this with you. Wes Saxton is minimum salary on St. Louis. He was having a good camp. They liked him in camp. Again, they don't have a ton of dynamic wide receivers in St. Louis. He was one of their early draft picks. He might have even been their first pick. The receivers aren't super fast. They Pearson L and Keith Mumphrey. Keith Mumphrey played 2016. He played for the Texans. I think that if you want to stack a pass catcher in St. Louis, I like going to the tight end at minimum salary and not taking a chance on the higher priced wide receivers. Mainly for St. Louis, who I'm looking at is Christian Michael. Of course, you all remember Christian Michael a little bit with the Cowboys, the Seahawks. Of all the running backs in the league, he's the player drafted highest in the NFL draft. He's the clear-cut number one back. He's $8,400 on DraftKings, $18 on Fanduel, and we just talked about how Chuck Long's offenses tend to run the ball considerably more than they throw the football. Christian Michael could be in for a big game. The rushing upside of Jordan Tiamu makes him an interesting play for me as well. And our final team, the Dallas Renegades. The Dallas Renegades are coached by Bob Stoops. We know about all of his years in Oklahoma, decorated career in Oklahoma. And their offensive coordinator is a man you may not have heard of, but has been around smaller college programs and CFL, etc. teams for the past 30 years. Really, for the last 20 years, he's been a head coach or an offensive coordinator. And that is Hal Mumme. Hal Mumme is well known in the smaller college ranks and the college ranks for being a pass-oriented offensive coordinator. In the last 20 years, he was a head coach or a coordinator from 97 to 2017. His teams averaged over 51 passes per game. So you can expect a lot of passing. Now, the real problem is we don't know who the quarterback is going to be yet. Landry Jones, who played for Bob Stoops at Oklahoma, is slated to be the starter, but he's injured. He's a game time decision. We don't know if he's going to play week 1. It's more likely that he plays week 2, leaving the job to Philip Nelson, who's $8,300 on DraftKings. Over on Fanduel, Landry Jones is $20, by the way, second most expensive quarterback. Philip Nelson is $16. Once I know, you can follow me on Twitter at DFS Bachelor. I'll have it posted right away. But right now, we just don't know who the quarterback's going to be. But I do love the fantasy upside for both quarterbacks in this kind of offense. And along with that, I love the receivers in this game. My favorite receiver right now is Jazz Ferguson. He's $4,200 on DraftKings and only $11 on FanDuel. This guy was a stud in the preseason. He nearly made the Seattle Seahawks roster. He was, if those of you who watched the preseason DFS show, he was awesome for us in preseason DFS. He's big, he's fast, he's the guy opposite side of the field is another fast player in Badette, so it's going to be hard to single cover either one of these wide receivers. Jazz Ferguson is just too cheap. $4,200 on DraftKings, $11 on FanDuel. Then you have Jeff Badette, who's $8,800 on DraftKings. Big play upside, but I really, really like that price for Jazz Ferguson. I think he has a big week. Let's kind of hope that they have a healthy Landry Jones and it's not the revolving quarterback door, but I do like him a lot tonight. So I think that is every position. Oh, Elijah, the Dallas running backs I wanted to talk about. They have 2 NFL running backs, Cameron Artis-Payne, Lance Dunbar. The problem is we just don't know who's going to get the bulk of the carries. You've got Artis-Payne at $6,800 on DraftKings, $4,400 or $19 on FanDuel, and Lance Dunbar at $4,400 on DraftKings, $15 on FanDuel. We did talk about Matt McGloin and the wide receiver injuries. Good. I just want to make sure I remembered everything because there's so much new information here. I think that's our video, folks. I hope this helps. Good luck to you all this weekend. Don't forget to like the video, comment in the comment section, and subscribe to the channel. Be part of our weekly $25 PayPal giveaway. I appreciate you all very, very much letting me be a part of your day. Good luck. Let's enjoy XFL. Be sure to check out our NBA videos for Fantasy Draft and FanDuel DraftKings as well that come out every single day. Appreciate you all again. Goodbye, folks.